Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to day 3 of Launching with the Moon. This is our final day where we are going to be diving into the core of the Moonsite launch system. So on day 1, we covered the overview of the system and how we can use the moon to not only plan launches and marketing, but we can use it for social media, and we can use it for goal setting, and we can use it for being able to accomplish our tasks. We can use it working one-on-one with clients. We can use it to understand our own personal rhythms and cycles and be able to gain more focus and more productivity because we understand those highs and lows that we are going to forever go through. And then day 2, we dove into Moonsite Social, which is the light version of Moonsite Social. There's going to be a full program coming out about that shortly. But what we cover in the lab is how to use the various social media platforms for your marketing and how to locate the social media houses in your birth charts. How do we know who to market to? How do we know the best times to market? Are we preparing what we're marketing ahead of time? And when are the best times to do that? So that's what we covered in day 2. And here in day 3, we are going to be diving into the core of the Moonsite planning system. And this is something that has actually evolved. The lab is going into its 5th year. And so it's been in evolution for 5 years. So when I first presented this material back in, I want to say 2018, I was mainly going by the phases only. Since then, there was an adaptation to add the elements in the zodiac in there. And now it is in its 3rd adaptation, which includes your houses, which I think is the very best way to launch because it's like a fingerprint. It is so customized to you in how you work, your highs and lows, your audience, what they're looking for from you, that we cannot get any better of a personalized fit than combining the houses with the zodiac and the elements. I know that sounds like a lot right now, and I promise I am going to make this sound and look a lot simpler to you as we kind of dive in. But this is essentially what we've been leading up to for the past now 3 days. In going in and looking at how we can layer in different aspects of our business and different things that are important to us in with the lunar cycle. And it's not just the lunar cycle that we take into account when we plan things in the lab. We also take into account working with Mercury retrograde, for example, and some of the other retrogrades as well. Just like we're talking about creating a layer cake, we can get more and more specific and more in tune with ourselves and what our community needs, what our audience needs, and what we need by paying attention to these cycles and by working with them. So today we're going to be talking about how do we launch. And I actually put a poll in the group about a week ago now, just asking, how many, members in the group are really comfortable with launching. Like, how often do you launch? Do you launch regularly? Or are you kind of afraid to launch? You want to, but you're really intimidated by it. And then I even asked, like, if you even know if you're familiar with the term launching. And then also there was the question of maybe you don't launch at all. And so that may be something that may hold some of you back because you're like, well, Vanessa, I don't launch. So how is this beneficial to me? I want you to think of anything that's important for you to get eyeballs on. So it could be like a book that you're writing that you want to promote. It could be the launch of a podcast. Like, maybe you're not directly selling anything yet. Maybe you don't have a group program. It could even be like you only work one-to-one, but you want to fill so many spots in that one-to-one. All right. Or you do done for you services and you want to fill so many spots in those done for you services. That's what I mean by launching, when I use that term, is kind of a blanket term because it's really just whatever you want to promote, right? And so that's where this is something that we can dive into more, and we can really, weed in there and figure out exactly what is most important to you. And that is the benefit of working with the Moonsite launch system is that as I take you through, and I'm going to show you in today's call, how you can customize your launches based on your outcome, based on what you want to accomplish within your business. So I just want to make sure that, can you guys see and hear me okay? Because I had a massive tech blunder on day one, and I want to make sure that I'm not talking to myself only, that this isn't like a solo routine. Can you just say hi in the comments and let me know if you can see and hear me okay? As it looks like I'm getting some eyeballs, but it's like not sure. I'm not sure. Say hi and let me know in the comments. Just going to take a quick peek here and make sure this is okay. You can hear me. Okay, good. Yay. All right. Thank you. I was like, I do not want to go through a whole day of like talking to myself. Okay, good. Good, good, good. Oh, you don't see a StreamYard link. That's so strange. Thank you for letting me know, Susanna. Oh, it's weird. Okay. Thank you guys. All right, so are we ready to dive into launching with the moon? Let me know if you are ready for this. I also want to say too, if you can't quite picture how you can use this, stay with me because I'm going to give some really great examples of how this is done. Even if you're not like an active launcher, or if you're really, really intimidated by launching. I promise, yes, there can be a lot of moving parts to it, but the benefit of launching based on how you operate is that you get to pick and choose what you want to put in there. You get to pick and choose if something feels right for you, if it doesn't, if you have time for it, or if you don't. I often, when I make a list of things that you kind of need to get done, if I'm preparing to promote something, I have like a master list of all the things that I would like to accomplish. And then usually by the end of it, I've accomplished like a handful of those things. And it's really just kind of prioritizing what's most important with the time that you have. And that really should be how it is across the board, because most of us are not operating with massive teams. And it's really actually just been this past year that I've actually gotten help in my business. Up until that point, it was totally a solo endeavor. And so I completely understand if you're like, hey, I don't have time to, do 65 different things. So I'm going to walk you through what this can look like. I'm going to talk about the Moonsite launch system as an overview. And then I'm going to give some examples. And then I'm going to show you how easy this can be by plugging and playing your chart into your launch. So I'm going to walk you through exactly what you can do inside the lab with this and how easy it can be. So like if you have some resistance or phobia, or you just feel completely overwhelmed around the astrology piece, and you're like, well, I really want to start working with my own flow, with my own rhythm, but the thought of having to learn something new, especially something that seems really complicated, it's just a no-go for me. This is going to really change the game for you, because it's going to show you that you don't need to know any of that to get the best dates. You don't need to know any of that to be able to market to your people at the time that they want to see and hear and buy your stuff. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And let's see, we're going to dive into this one right here. All right. And I'm going to go into there. I'm just going to make sure that it's coming up okay. That's not the one we want. There we go. All right. So day 3, launching your offers and promotions with the moon. Okay. So as we talked about there, we've done a little bit of a swift move into this. And I know that I've covered a lot of material over the course of the past couple of days, but I promise this is more of an application training, I would say. So day 1 was like a big, overview of the entire system. So it was a lot of the heavy duty, data that you might need just to kind of connect all the dots. And then Wednesday was an application training, where I literally walked you through how to locate the stuff in your chart, how to draw a transit chart, how to determine, where your social media houses are. And we talked a little bit about how to match up some of the social media platforms to them and how to market during those particular times. And today we're going to be talking about how to pair your launches using the transits of the moon and your astrology chart. So I'm going to walk you through how to do this. I won't be able to show you absolutely everything today, but I'm going to show you the really good stuff just so that you can kind of see, hey, this is how easy it can be when we're popping everything in there. And here's how I'm gathering this information, right? So moving forward, the goal today is how to launch with the moon without burning out or sharing offers that don't sell or launching to crickets. And I'll talk a little bit about, often what we do not see in the online space, which I think can actually be really harmful because we don't have an honest perspective of what the experiences can be like. And I think that it does everybody a disservice if you're looking into promoting your offers in the online space. We should have a pretty good idea of what that looks like, not just what we see on the surface of what everybody else is doing, but what to expect, right? How can we be realistic with what we're expecting? We often see a lot of the wins celebrated, massive multi-six-figure launches, for example, but we don't see the losses. We don't see the cost of that massive multi-six-figure launch. We don't see the fact that it took them however long to get there, or how much money in ad spend did they spend? Like did they have a validated offer, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, just so that we can kind of come at this from a very, very grounded perspective. Okay. So when we think about launching, I want to say nothing brings your worst fears to the surface faster. Because we are at that point at our most vulnerable, we often are pushed to the limits of what we know is possible because we've never experienced what's on the other side of that before. We're facing our biggest fears. We're operating out of our comfort zones. We're straddling the unknown, and we're asking people for money all at the same time. So let me know if you've ever experienced this. Obviously, even just birthing your business can have a lot of these similarities, but especially when we put a lot of time and energy into a promotion of something, whether we're using a teaching method to kind of put the material out there, or we're running ads, or we're writing content, and we're releasing it. It can bring a lot of really vulnerable and raw feelings up around, like, are they going to accept it? Are they going to judge me for it? Are they even interested in buying it? What if they don't buy? Have I wasted all of this time, all this energy that I could have been putting towards something else, right? I think we also struggle with our identification around the content and the work that we put into things. We kind of take it personally if somebody doesn't buy it. That maybe they're rejecting not just the offer, but they're rejecting us. So during these times, obviously, we can find ourselves riddled with worry. We may be asking questions like, is it the right offer? Is it the right time? Did I use the right words, the right message? Is it the right price or the right value? Is it the right duration? Does it meet their needs? Do I have a strong enough connection with my community? Do people even want this? And did I sell it the right way? So launch fear, I'd love to hear if you've had any of these experiences. Can you relate to this, whether you've launched or you're thinking about it or you're recovering from it? We've all often battled with these thoughts and feelings. So let me know in the comments, have you had any of these experiences? Have you had offers that you've put out that have not sold? That's a big one. I've had several of those, and they can take quite a lot to recover from. So let me know in the comments if you have had any of these experiences, or just the fear of them happening, which can also be a big one. So as I mentioned, I am no stranger to launch failure. I've had many launch failures where I spent weeks and months creating content, program materials, sales pages, only to get a big fat zero. And it is something that it will shake you to your core. And I want to say, I think that we don't hear enough about this. Like, obviously, This is something that people talk about when they want to sell you their next big thing. But it's not necessarily something that they're completely open and honest about when they themselves have gone through it, right? Because we want to learn from an expert, not from a failure. But I would say in my case personally, I've learned more from my failures than I have from just my wins alone. Having put out things that don't sell teaches you a lot about your own determination and your perseverance, and your desire to have something on the other end of it, like that you want to. This is really important to you. It's not just a small thing. The other things that you learn is what people want and what they don't want. You learn things about timing. You learn things about pacing. You learn things about language, about structure, and about pricing your offer and who the right people are for that offer. And I think in some cases, those are things that we cannot learn without a couple failures under our belt. No matter how much people promise us that we can avoid all that by using some kind of system, right? And sometimes it takes really testing things out and dipping our toe in and finding out for sure. So our goal here today, I want to say this is not your average boring launch training. And there's nothing I hate more than time wasting, eyeball rolling webinars. So here is what you're going to expect from today. We're going to be talking about the elements, right? The energy of a launch in this case, and how it can either help or hinder us in getting our messaging out there. And also help us to connect with the people that we can actually help. We're going to be talking about launch timing with the moon, astrological timing, and priming. And that's a very important piece in the astrological cycle. And we'll talk a little bit about that so that you're offering your goodness at the time that people are ready to receive it and that you are ready to deliver it. And we're also going to be talking about the moon site launch system and how to plan your launches using the moon for more ease, flow, and success. So the truth is that no one's talking about is that we often do not hear about launch failures, right? So let's set the record straight. There is no filters here. We're just going to talk about the bare bones of it, right? I have had many, many, many launch failures. So we're going to talk about pulling back the curtain of the glorious launch. So as I mentioned before, I don't hide the fact that I have had many launch failures. And in some cases, it's due to things that are completely out of our hands, right? Like it could be like tech stuff, hitting you at just the right time to affect a launch. It could be that something in the world starts to take more attention than your launch. It could be that you have a personal situation that kind of comes up within your family, and you have to detour out of your launch. Or there's other things that you just didn't sell it the right way. It wasn't the right price. It wasn't the right timing. It wasn't the right solution, maybe, or you didn't frame the solution in the best way. I have had launches where I created entire programs, including sales pages, only to have no one buy. I have had programs where I had 3 people who were interested and 2 of them were trying to bargain me down on the price. I have had a mastermind that had 3 people in it. So there's been lots and lots of circumstances where it just didn't go well. All right. I've also, had one of the worst launches I ever had. First launch that I ran Facebook ads in, spent money that I hadn't made back yet and I had, it was huge. I had I think there was 5 different other people who were going to be teaching content in it. And not only did I have massive tech issues to such an extreme that my site was blacklisted, it was hacked. People would get warnings when they went there. I had my sales pages crashing. It wouldn't publish. And I just, it literally it ate me alive. I did not make enough money to even pay the people who I was bringing on board to teach the material to those who had signed up. So that one hurt. That one hurt a lot. But the breakthrough of that was that it eventually became the Moonsite lab, right? So there was lots of modifications from there, lots of learning experiences from there. And I hope that you don't let your fears of a launch failure deter you from putting your work out there. It is not a fun experience to have, launch to crickets or to have something not work out the way that you planned, but it is the best teacher. It helps us to refine our offers. It helps us to figure out what people want really. And sometimes we can shortcut that. Sometimes we are fortunate and we can shortcut some of those lessons, but not all the time. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still jump in and put your stuff out there and be willing to have some of the things fail, right? The breakthrough with all of this is that the moon shows us our needs, and it also shows us how we need to be nurtured. And so when we start to time things with this, we find that we're in a better flow, which really helps when we're putting out offers. And also being able to maintain the energy to not only promote, but to create the content that's needed in there and to maintain the energy of a launch. So the launch has its own energy. But there is a lot of other things that can be benefited by noticing that there's already a cycle in motion, right? That we're not having to create all this momentum ourselves. Okay, so this is where we're going to dive into the Moonsite launch system. From poop to multi-5-figure launches, the moon determines the needs of your community. And if you are not meeting these needs, they're not going to buy, right? So as you start to track and as you start to plan and move forward, you're going to start to notice, if you haven't already, that there is going to be these periods where your energy picks up, where you're going to be getting a lot more done, and then it's going to naturally slow down. And that is the same case in a launch, right? So a friend of mine says we're riding waves, right? And each launch wave is different, right? So we're having to learn to surf those waves as they kind of go through, to pace our energy through, and to introduce or to be able to operate kind of on the fly. And that's going to be the case with every offer that we put out at any given time. But we are much more available to those changes, and we're much more, I would say, capable of managing them because we're not in burnout stage than we are if we are not paying attention to these cycles. Okay, so how do you know that you're in the right place? If you've had any failed launches and you're looking to make your next launch the best yet, if you're in launch recovery or you're experiencing burnout and you're looking for more flow and space in your launches to launch according to your astrology, your own personal makeup. If you're looking to make your marketing and launches even more effective through astrological timing and marketing through the elements. If you've never launched before, but you know that you cannot do what everyone else is telling you that you need to do in order to be successful, or if you've tried other launch methods and you've been disappointed at how cookie cutter or fake they seem and you're ready for a new way to do business. So this, I think, is really the big key thing. Especially the piece around following other people's cookie cutter launches. And there can be periods in our business where we, are in a financial place where we feel like, hey, I don't have a choice. I have to do what they're teaching me because this needs to be successful, right? But what I found, honestly, is that yes, maybe there's some key elements in there that we need to do, like make sure that we're making sure the offer is clear, make sure that there's a time frame on the offer so that it's not just completely open-ended and people forget about it. Those things obviously are important in any launch. But when it comes to a lot of the other pieces, you don't have to sell your soul in order to be able to make money and run a business online. All right. So if that is something that you've kind of come back from, I really want to encourage you to notice that, long before there was sleazy internet marketers, there was people doing business, and there was people who had problems, and there was people who had solutions to those problems, and there was people who genuinely wanted to help. And that is traditionally how businesses always operated. And I still think that's at the core of any great business, is a customer loyalty and a business that truly wants to serve. And I feel that if we add in this timing in there, then we're making sure that these offers are being delivered at the right time, which takes away a lot of the stress and a lot of the guesswork and a lot of the legwork of trying to kind of modify things as we go along. Okay, so let's start this one-woman circus. I want to show you how launching with the moon not only helps to pace your energy out during a launch and offer the right things at the right time, but it also meets the needs of your potential clients, naturally moving them from to buyers and selling out your offers. So there's three primary steps to a successful launch. Step one is the 4 elements of energy and sales psychology, which we're going to talk about today. Step two is astrological timing, which is choosing the most optimum astrological periods for you and your community and avoiding the times where you're most likely to struggle. Or if you can't avoid it, that's a good time to be pre-scheduling certain things in. And step three is launching with the moon using the moon state launch system. And this is especially helpful if you're sensitive to energy, the emotions of your community, and you cannot fake it until you make it. So step one, the 4 elements of energy and sales psychology, the 4 elements of a launch that meets the needs of your audience. And I would argue that this is the biggest piece. So 2 aspects of this. One is acknowledging that your audience or your community has a need. And 2, that they may not be aware of that need. And that is a big piece. They may think that they need something else. They may think their problem is connected to something else. They may not have the knowledge or the experience that you do, maybe because you've been working in that much longer or you were able to solve that problem for yourself, which is usually a big thing of why we go into business to begin with. We figured something out and we want to help other people to solve that as well. So the 4 elements of a launch are going to also take into account that there's likely some kind of a warm-up period where you might be educating your community. You might be positioning the problem in a different light, because if they if it was really easy to solve, they probably would have done it by now. So this is a good time to to position the struggle and to infuse your awareness of that struggle, to not only acknowledge it from an empathic perspective, like to say, hey, I know how this feels, but also here's what changed for me was when I realized this about this particular problem, or I realized it was connected to this, or I realized that it had nothing to do with this other thing, or it was a symptom of something else. And what's great about leveraging that and introducing that before you actually make your offer is that they are starting to be able to connect dots that they didn't before. They then become ready for a different kind of solution, maybe one that they hadn't considered before. And just as we are going through the moon's transits, again, as I mentioned on Wednesday and Monday, so is our audience, right? And if we don't meet their needs through the cycle, we're going to fail to gain their trust and ultimately the sale. And maybe someone else is going to get it, right? Because someone else was positioned at a better time for them. The best part is that what we naturally want is often what we naturally want to do anyways, right? We just haven't been intentional about it. It tends to kind of be something that you're taken by surprise. You go from, having a certain type of energy, a certain type of focus, and then it shifts, and then you're like, well, what happened, right? So if we don't have to be taken by surprise from it, and we can anticipate it, that's going to change a lot of things in our work, and it's going to change a lot around our expectations of ourselves. Okay, so how are we doing so far? What are you holding in that photo? Poop. Oh no, it looked like poop. It's actually melted milk duds. It was milk duds. My husband took a photo of it because I was like, I bet you our kids would still eat this, even though it looks like poop. Milk duds. Okay. All right. So the 4 elements of energy and sales psychology, we talked about these 4 elements on Monday, which is fire, earth, air, and water. Obviously, these fit into the 12 zodiac signs. Each zodiac, there's 3 zodiac per element. And so they always repeat in the same cycle. So what the benefit of this is that we have like what I talked about, I think it was on Wednesday. I talked about like doing laps, like if we were like a race car and we have those, where they spin your tires and they, refill your gas and you get water and whatever. We have those little rest stops kind of along the way. And that is how the zodiac is set up. That's how these 4 elements are set up. They're always going to repeat in this exact same order. over and over and over again. So water refills fire, fire refills earth, earth refills air, air refills water, right? And we're constantly just replenishing so long as we're focusing on those particular types of activities or that particular type of approach. So some of the ways that we can kind of break down these sales psychology is like fire, for example, is really good for CTAs, right? Calls to action. It's really good for getting people fired up or pissed off about something, or inviting them to buy, or getting them to, even if you're not ready to sell them yet, you can say, hey, I've got this event coming. You should sign up, right? That is an awesome time for you to kind of get them on board, right? It's also a period where they're often owning where they're at and where they want to go and what's necessary to get there, right? So they're willing to do something about it. And I think that is something that's really underestimated in the online marketing space. For whatever our offers are, your people actually have to be ready to do something about that problem, right? Otherwise, they're not going to buy. They might be like, yeah, it'd be really great to solve that problem, but I don't have the energy to solve that problem. I don't have the interest to solve that problem. I don't have the time right now to solve that problem, or that problem just isn't big enough or painful enough for me to want to do something about it yet, right? And so that's a huge piece in terms of our marketing is making sure that as you're moving people through and you're creating this container where magic's going to happen, where transformation is going to happen, you only want people in there who are ready to take part in that transformation, who are ready to do something about that. Otherwise, it's just going to dampen the energy down of whatever it is that you're offering, right? It's going to be kind of lackluster. In terms of earth energy, this is more like the meaty content where we're teaching a lot of information. It might be the system, the solution, the method, the details, the money. It could also be, how things are organized, the resources, the how-tos, or the features. In air, it's more the philosophy, right? It's that big picture. It's the connections, the community, variety. So it could be like different kinds of humor, different types of content. So whether it's like video, audio, cheat sheets, it's going to be connecting the dots for them. How is this related? Is there a connection to another idea or a different understanding that takes place? It's also how we're connected to everybody else, right? So this is the energy that creates movement. Water is the emotion. It's the why. It's the story of your product or your offer. It's your story. It could be their story, their pain, their struggles, their beliefs. It's a shifting of the blame, right? And a big thing when we start to kind of share our solution and we talk about the problem, it's very important that you make sure that they cannot be seen as the full cause of their own problem, right? Because otherwise that's not motivating enough. If they are the cause, then they are the reason why it's not getting fixed and they don't feel like they can change, right? And usually if that's the case, right? So we feel kind of stuck in that. So this is a good time with water, is that we're going to kind of give a bigger overview, a bigger picture, really like the ancestry of the problem, right? Of how it kind of came to be and why they're struggling with that, and how in some ways it's probably not fair. It's also beliefs, right? The beliefs that it can be different for them. It's really, showing that you believe in them. So the trust there, and it's also the benefits, right? So what are the bigger benefits other than just maybe the more basic ones? What are the bigger, more emotional benefits to the offer itself? So why is this so important is that if we fail to meet the needs of our potential client, they're not obviously going to buy, but they're also not going to be helped by you. By working with all these elements, we're going to help them to define their experience through your product or service. And that is a huge thing. This is how brands are made, right? If they can define their experience through your product or service, they will associate you with that solution, right? And if we think about that, we think about, if you have to invest in something, maybe it's a car, or maybe it's a new water bottle. It could be something as simple as that, right? And you're like, well, I really need a new water bottle because my water bottle is leaking everywhere. And every time I put it in my bag, it's spilling on my papers. And then I feel like, I feel like I'm incompetent. I feel like I'm a mess. I have to clean up my car afterward, and I've had to, it's destroyed my purse or whatever. And all of a sudden we're looking at a water bottle and we're thinking, okay, well, I need a water bottle that doesn't leak. But now I found this water bottle that also happens to donate proceeds to this cause that I really care about. And I found this water bottle that uses this, it's very environmentally friendly. They only use recycled materials, for example. Now, all of a sudden, we're defining our problem, right, and our experience through their product or service. We feel like we're being a better human by buying that water bottle, right? And it's amazing how interconnected it can all be. But if you think that broadly about your offers, even if it's not a product, it could be a service, it could be a digital product, right? If they can see themselves through that and they can understand themselves better and they can feel better, right, overall about the good that they're doing in some area of their life. Maybe it's a feeling of just giving them that feeling that they have their shit together for once. That right there is helping them to define themselves and their experience through your product or service. And that is very powerful, right? It creates a relationship between you and them, and it confirms and validates that you're on the right track with your marketing, right? And nothing validates your offer faster than focusing on these needs. And if we look at everything about why people buy as connected to some kind of need, we then are not entering into it going, well, maybe I should use this word or that word, right? Maybe it's not so much this graphic or that color. It is far deeper than that. It is far more intricate in that. And that is why sometimes even people who have really shitty websites can still sell, or have no website at all, can still do very well selling, because they've connected their offer with that person's need and they understand that need very well. So this brings us to that 4 elements of energy and sales process during a launch. And this is just a really basic overview. I'm going to bring you much deeper into this, so don't worry. But as we talked about those 4 elements, this is basically what's repeating, right? We might start off with the idea. You might share your idea with people. You might give them a sign-up page. You get them excited. Then we move into the building stage. Maybe at this point you're building your content. You're sharing pieces of it, maybe in your group for curiosity. Maybe you're teaching them little bits. Then you're moving into air, which is more thought. Like, so how can I share this with them so they can understand it? If they don't have a reference point, what am I connecting it to? How is it connected to my bigger vision? And then we're moving into more emotions. Usually this is the point where you would have some resistance around offering it. Can I do this? There could be some emotional residue or some trauma that comes up. This is also a good time to talk with them about their struggles so that you're kind of like united on that front. Then this is the point where maybe you're holding a free event, you're getting them excited about the content, you're sharing your sales page, maybe you're opening your cart, you're getting them to take action and making them a part of that process. Then you teach more of the content, you help them to visualize it and input it into their systems, give them data. And at this point, usually under Earth moons, we can really understand a lot of information, right? We can apply it. Then we step into the philosophy, which is air. We're connecting it to their broad range vision. We're telling them the bigger reason as to why you're sharing it and why it makes a difference. Then we move into water again, which would be like transformation. How is this going to change their life? Can you help them to feel it? Can you empower them? Can you show them that you believe in them? Can you connect it at a heart place? And usually around this point, we would be focusing on closing and wrapping up our offer, right? Getting them to take action by letting them know that it's ending soon. If they want to be a part of the process, they're gonna jump on. There is some kind of closure, whether they buy or they don't buy. There's usually some kind of closure that's going to happen within this part of the cycle. Then here, if your cart's not completely closed, maybe you're really conveying the value, right? How is it going to impact them physically? Will it save them money? Will it save them time? What is the ROI on their investment? And usually by this point, we've completely wrapped up, and that's when we hit air again. Did they join? They often at this point have become a more involved member in your community in some way. They've gone through some of your content. This is a good time to help them to feel like they belong, whether they bought or they didn't. And then this is the emotional page, the stage, right? So this is a period where you're also having an emotional response, like you've moved through all of this, but so are they, right? There was some transformation that took place through this period. Can you help them to integrate that transformation, who they are now, whether they are in your free or your paid content? This is usually a release. This is also could be an opportunity right around here for a downsell. So if they didn't buy your bigger offer because they're not ready to do that, maybe with your help, maybe they're ready to do something, solo. They're ready to do a DIY, and that could be a downsell, right? So this just gives an example of how we can structure this and what this can look like in terms of like a visual process. So how are we doing so far? So it's like a full month for a launch runway. Yes, I would say the average launch is 1.5 lunar cycles. You can do it in less, especially if you have like some of the structures already set up in place. You can. But it depends on, and again, it also depends on how much time you need to prepare those materials, right? I'm just gonna get rid of this here. All right, sorry. I gotta block some people here. All right. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Okay. So this just gives us an idea in terms of a container, right? But we're going to get a little bit more specific than this. So I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like when we lay it out, when we put it into a calendar, when we're planning it out based on your astrology, right? So let's go take a look at the next one. So before I fully dive into that, let's look at the takeaways here. Overall, it's not about how many hours of video are included. People only really care if you can solve their problem, right? So through using the elements, we not only make sure that we're meeting their needs and our own, but we're also getting really valuable data to validate our offer and improve its connectability and trust, right? So step 2 is the astrological timing. This is delivering the offer at the right time, which can mean the difference between having a successful launch or having one that no one knows about. Astrologically speaking, there are times that we want to plan things for, and there are times that we want to avoid planning things for because we're going to be too emotional, too low energy, or not in the right space, right? How do we determine when we are in a potent astrological window or the danger zone, right? This is just a very big overview. If you don't know what any of this means, do not worry. Because most of the time, I lay this out in the Moonside Digital Calendar, which is really for everybody. But if you're looking more at your own personal astrology and you're curious about some of the best times to launch, when the moon is transiting your natal moon, that is called a lunar return. When the sun is transiting your natal sun, that's called a solar return. So that happens once a year. When the moon is transiting your natal sun, that happens once a month. We tend to be a little bit more emotional around that point. As well as when the moon is transiting our natal moon, that's called a lunar return. That also happens once a month. When the moon is in your 5th or your 11th houses, that's awesome. We already talked about that on Wednesday. That is those social media house and that creation house that we talked about. When the moon crosses your ascendant, that is where you're going to have a big burst of energy that's going to come up once a month. When the moon is in a fire sign, unless it's in those 4th, 8th, or 12th houses, which we haven't fully talked about, but those are more personal houses or more private and they're more low energy. Between first quarter to last quarter moon and avoiding it when it's in your 12th house. Also the months when the new moon or full moon that themes the focus of your offer. And so I covered that piece a lot in Cosmic Planning Extravaganza. Do not let this overwhelm you. You do not need to know anything that I just shared here in order to map out your launch. I'm going to show you how to do this without needing to know any of this information. Okay. So please do not get all like, usually googly eyed when we start looking at this. But if you do have a bit of astrology background, you're going to know what this is. Okay. The worst times to launch something important is when the moon is void. And those times are marked in the Moonside Digital Calendar. In your time zone, it's automatically converted. You're going to know when those periods are. They happen every couple of days. They last anywhere from a couple of minutes to, it could be hours or even a day or more. So we definitely want to know about those because they're periods where we're much more introverted, and they are a period, if you post something, people don't tend to see it. right? You're not going to get much engagement on it. When the sun is transiting your natal moon, that's a period where we tend to be, for about a week, we tend to be really raw, right? When the moon is transiting your descendant, that's where we tend to be a little bit lower energy. When the moon is in your 4th, 8th, or 12th houses, as I mentioned, Mercury retrograde, and this is a little asterisk. I say this as long as you do not, if you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, in your birth chart, so when you were born, Mercury was retrograde, it's actually a power period for you. But for anybody who does not have that, that tends to be a period where we have a lot more things going sideways, right? Especially if it's in water or fire signs, or if it's transiting through your 2nd, 6th, 10th, 11th, or 12th houses. It can bring up some stuff, and that can be a challenge to experience that during a launch when we're already having a lot of things that we're having to be responsible for, right? Okay, so step 2 for astrological timing. Why is this so important? It matters because if we find ourselves in the middle of a launch, when we are at an astrologically vulnerable time, we may sabotage ourselves to get those cosmic needs met. We may also find that if it's not just a transit that's affecting us, it could be like Mercury retrograde, for example. It's going to be affecting our community. And that tends to be where we have more problems that tend to crop up, whether it's like tech problems or communication problems. It just tends to not go quite as well. Okay, so an example of astrological timing, as I mentioned, I've had plenty of my own ill-timed launches, which I've shared, but I'll share an experience of a friend and a client of mine who had unintentionally planned a launch during Mercury retrograde in Cancer. And the result was very cranky, complaining clients having emotional meltdowns on an offer that had just recently been launched before with success. So it was like out of left field. She was like, I don't understand. I literally just launched this like a month ago. People were really excited about it. And now I got people who are, sending me private messages, and they're, chewing me out, and they're complaining. And I just don't understand what's going on. Mercury retrograde in Cancer especially is one to be careful about because it does bring out a lot of emotional responses where people are taking things especially very personally under Cancer. But this is a good example of astrological timing. So, if she had gone entirely on just like, well, I launched it before, here is my numbers, here's how much I spent on Facebook ads, let's do it again. If that had been the only gauge, everything else would have looked like it made no sense, right? But because we're now taking into account transits like Mercury retrograde, we can go, okay, well, that's why that happened, right? And that really helps to give us a lot more data, a lot more information to work with so that we can plan better, right? And we don't have to, and sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes you're like, I need money and I have this unexpected bill and I don't have a choice. But at least then we can set different expectations of ourselves and of the outcome because we know what we're walking into, right? The worst thing is if you don't know what you're walking into. So in terms of step 2 for astrological timing, it can determine whether it's an easy or a difficult launch. A lot of launch difficulties can be alleviated by astrological planning. So that you can launch when you will be at your best and when your community will be at their most receptive. So step 3 is the moon site launch system, which I'm going to walk you through. It is using the moon's phases and the elements as well as your houses to create a launch that supports you, your community, and your offer, right? By using those 4 elements and potent astrological timing. Even if you do not know a thing about astrology or you've never had a successful launch, knowing when to share your offers and the elements to include at the right time saves you from having to experience failure to get the data that you could have gotten by following the 4 elements while selling out your offer, right? Because as we move along, especially as we enter like a kind of like a pre-launch period or a runway period, we're actually also gathering very important data and we're able to validate the offer even before we sell it, right? And that's a big piece because you don't want to be starting to spend money on advertising on an offer that has not been validated, right? So step 3 takeaway, if you've launched before and you've burnt out or the thought of launching makes you mentally exhausted, this system is going to change your life. It is the launch model successfully used by sensitives, creatives, and entrepreneurs who want to stand out and create great products and change lives and also have their sanity intact at the end of it. Right? So before I step into that, I want to walk you through what this can look like. The philosophy value would be houses 9 and 10, and the transformation closing and houses 11 and 12. You don't want to touch 12. 12 is kind of like, you do not want to end anything in 12. You either end it just before 12 or you end it after, right? And that means that you're pre-scheduling content out. And I'll show you what this looks like in terms of the, I have a whole thing set up here for you. We're just literally going to plug the information in. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll stop this share. I've got some things to walk you through here. So there's going to be a couple of things I'm going to show you. So first of all, let me see, what should I show you first? I should show you, let's see. I'm going to show you this one. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that okay. It looks like it's there. All right, so this is just one board, right, of the Moonsight Launch 2.0 system. So there is 10 of these, and they are all customized based on the goal, right? So for example, this is the classic, this is what I call the classic launch, which means that overall, this is the one that I've used the most. It's the one that essentially started off the Moonsight Launch system. And it's the one that I use intuitively for myself until I fully developed it out. After that point, I've developed other ones based on different goals. So for example, there is launch boards for if you have like a lot of meaty content you're teaching. So we have one that's called the Blueprint Launch. If you're wanting to build your brand as an expert, there's an expert launch. If you've got one that's like affiliates or a collaborative one, there's a collaborative launch. And even if small launches. So let's say you're like, hey, I got this small offer. I want to offer it for like 3 days. I don't want to do some massive launch for it. Then we have one that's like an under the radar launch, right? So these are boards that are literally plug and play, right? So the way that we use this, and I'm going to walk you through this. So we would initially pop in our launch dates here, and you might be wondering, well, how do we choose our launch dates, right? The reason that this system is plug and play is because it uses your chart data. So as we move through this, I'm just going to walk you through this first, and then I'm going to pop in the dates, and you're going to see how this is actually going to work. But first, I'm going to show you just a big version of what this looks like here. So this is where we would be starting our cart open, for example, with this launch. But before we open our cart, we start promoting around here. So I want you to think the moon is moving all the way around your chart. It gets to here. This is where you open your cart. And then here, you're going to be closing it somewhere around here. This is a much larger launch. This is if you need a longer runway because you have to write your sales copy, for example. You have to start emailing your list and warming them up about it. You have to create your opt-in pages. You have maybe some content even to create. This is why this is a little bit longer, right? So that essentially is the movement that we're looking at here. And I'm going to walk you through what these boards are looking like. So in our pre-launch, this one is actually not even on that diagram. So this is if you're like, hey, this is a much larger offer and I've not done this. I've not launched it before maybe, or I did, but it was like, you know, it was like a beta launch or something like that, right? So I need more warm-up time. Or I'm going to be running some ads and I want people to get onto my list and I want to build a little bit of a relationship with them before I start selling to them, right? So in this case, as you'll notice, I mentioned that this area is optional and it's really based on how much time you have. So here I've marked off what house it's going to start in. And each one of these has a pre-launch checklist, okay? And the benefit of this is that it tells you exactly what to do and when, right? What's the order? If you've never launched before, there's literally checklists for all of these, right? And as we go through, we have have essentially, you know, I would say like runways of each portion of the launch, right? We have pre-launch, the pre-launch area, the launch, the cart close, and the post-launch. And so this again is for a longer offer, but you can do ones that are shorter, and there's boards already in there for that. So a way to start to work with this is that we would want to have your astrology information, right? We would want to know, well, how do I know when house 5 is happening, right? And so that is where inside the lab where you're going to be grabbing that. We have a training or a section in there that's called to, you know, creating your personal astrology calendar. And I have created, let me switch over here. I have created, I think I can just actually share my whole screen, and that would make it a lot easier. So I'm not losing you guys in tabs. Here we go. All right. So this one. All right. All right. So as you can see here, this is if I had taken my personal birth data and I put it into Google Calendar. So there's a whole training on this. This is what we would be working from when you pump in or pop in your dates, right? So as we can see here, it is literally marking off when you have moon in the 3rd house, moon in the 4th, moon in the 5th, right? And so on and so on. Well, moon in the 6th is like gone missing there. Just ignore that one. That's a tech glitch. But if I was working with that, let me just move ahead here. Okay, we'll start from moon in the 11th. And so the benefit of this is that we already have all the dates that we need. When we go back to the board, we would match up with the houses that we're looking for. So here we can see that cart open for this particular launch category is between house 10 and house 11, right? And it gives you an estimate here. It says it can last anywhere between 3 to 7 days, depending on the size of your houses and the amount of content, right? So cart open is somewhere between house 10 and house 11. If you like to kick your event off with opening your cart at the same time, that would be house 10. If you want to start your event, but you want it to go a couple of days before you open your cart, then that would be, say, house 11, right? So that's what I mean by house 10 or house 11. So there is a full checklist in here. We can see where that's going to fall. But right now we have a date. We can see where house 10 falls, right? House 10 is going to fall right here. So if that's the case, I know already where this is going to fall for me, right? And if you're comfortable using Trello, and even if you're not, it's actually really intuitive to use. These are like drag and drop. I can move these around. But you can pair it with something called Chronify, which will integrate with your Google Calendar. So let's say I want to do my cart open starting somewhere around house 10. So here I know, based on this Google Calendar, that my house 10 right here starts at 3 o'clock, right? So I might decide, okay, well, I'm going to start my event maybe on Tuesday, right? Because it's starting kind of later in the day. And I don't want to open my cart or start my promotion in house 9. So maybe I'm going to make it, this is like, you know, a day where I'm getting them excited. I'm saying, hey, we're starting tomorrow. So if I know that that's my date, all I have to do in here for this one is I can enter dates. Now, the benefit of this is that there is a full checklist, and I'll walk you through what this can look like. I'm trying to do this as I'm also trying to think of what the best way to show you this is. So let's say I want this to be my cart open, right? So in here, I can go and I can click edit my dates, right? And I want this to fall on the 29th, right? Or I could even say at 3 o'clock on the 10th or on the 28th. That's my house 10. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. So the 28th, here we go. So it would say it would be there, and I'm going to have it start at 3 o'clock, right? That's my 3 o'clock, and it would be PM. Okay. So now I have my date, and let's say I want it to start, have it start here, and it's going to go to house 10 goes until March 30th. All right. So I'm going to click here. There we go. We'll put it at like 11 p.m. There we go. Okay, so now I can save that. It's now got the dates on it, right? I click save. And if I go into here, I can make sure that it's paired and it's going to set it for a time, right? So I can update my settings. And if I go over to Google Calendar, it's going to refresh it. Okay, I think I have to like unsync it for a second. Sorry, guys. And then I resync it. Do 3 hours. There we go. Okay. Oh, there it is. It's just, oops. It's not letting me, oh, it's starting it later. Here we go. It's starting it for some reason down here. I must have hit AM instead of PM. But you get the point. Let me edit this one. Let's just choose the 28th at 3 p.m. There we go. This will show it a little bit easier. Bear with me for 1 sec. Pop it back in there. Oh, there we go. Okay, and we'll refresh this one more time. So there it is. We can see that that would be your cart open. So the benefit of this is that you already have all your houses laid out. You know when those are going to fall. And you can do this with every single one of these. Now, let's say, for example, you're like, well, I want to be able to make time for some of the things on this checklist. When you open this up, when you open this up, I can turn each and every single one of these into a card, and I can set a date for them. So let's say I'm like, okay, well, I have to decide the format of my free event. I'm going to convert this one to a card. And I'm just going to move it up to here. There it is. And now I can assign a date. So I can go back and look and say, okay, well, house one in here is right here. Let's say that's today. Okay. So Thursday, the 10th at, I'll say, let's pick noon. Okay. So when I go into here, I can hit a time, Thursday. I don't know why it's showing Thursday on there. Technically the 11th today. Okay, and we'll say 3 o'clock. We'll leave that one there. Save, save. And we can just make sure that it's syncing. There we go. Format, decide the format of your free event. I've given myself 3 hours for that. So it will automatically connect right to the Trello board in there so that I can refer back to that, that card. There it is. I can make any notes. I can work right from there, and it's automatically connected in with my Google Calendar. Now, the benefit of this as well is that we can easily switch on the other astrology events. So if we want to pair that, let's say we were only looking at the moon one, we can say, okay, well, that's great. That's starting during first quarter. That's awesome for me. Here is the zodiac or the element that I'm going to be working under. Okay, well, it's Cancer. So I'm going to be a little bit more emotional when I'm working on this, but that's really good for maybe writing a bit of copy around it, right? So I'm deciding it. I'm picking something that's going to have an emotional connection for my people, et cetera, right? So the benefit of working this way is you don't have to know anything about your own astrology to plug all these dates in. You can pop them in there. You'll know exactly when you're doing your cart close. This one gives a full checklist of everything that you're going to do. And you can create separate cards for them if you want. And you're set and ready and set to go. So that's how easy that this can be when it comes to launching this way. So I wanted to show you guys that. Let me see if I can stop the screen. There we go. Do you guys have any questions so far? So then okay, so I've gotten that one. When planning a launch, how do you navigate when you have fire in houses 4, 8, and 12? Okay, so you may not have fire in houses 4, 8, and 12. When I just showed you the Google Calendar where your information is in there because you've added it from the lab, you're going to know, okay, well, in house 4, for example, I have Libra, for example, right? So you're going to know where that is. You're going to also know when there is an Aries moon or there is a Leo moon. You're going to know what house that's going to fall in for you because it's already going to be in your calendar. And it makes it far easier to just, customize what we're doing on those particular days, right? Just saying, okay, well, house 4, it's really good for family stuff. Libra is really good for making things beautiful. It's really good for me to minimalize maybe, or to declutter, for example, or it could be good for me to sit down and work on my branding, right? So that's how we can kind of customize that in terms of like tasks. And then when it comes to the actual launch itself, maybe you don't want to be launching during house 4 because it's a really personal house, right? Sasha says, when we create content based on the elements to meet the audience needs, do we look at the sign where the moon is at? Absolutely. Absolutely. Your personal, whenever the moon, so they're kind of layered, right? Whenever the moon is in that particular sign, it's going to be in one of your houses. It may not be like, that may be a really good time for you to work on personal stuff for yourself. And maybe it's not a good time for that. Doesn't mean you can't work, but we just want to make sure that we're adding in making sure that we're meeting our needs essentially during that time, right? So this is not like, never work on those days, but it is saying, okay, well, I know I'm going to be a little bit more low energy because it just so happens to be falling in house 4, 8, or 12 for me. Right. And that's a more private house, and I'm going to be more personally, focused during that time. And so maybe I'm going to have a hard time focusing on, being really productive in my business on those days. So I can still work, but I'm going to break it up maybe. Right. I hope that answers your question, Sasha. Is this a lab class? It's all in the lab. Yes, there's full trainings on all of this. Shannon says, oh my goodness, I have tears, Vanessa. Once I'm able to wrap my brain around using Trello and Moonsight planning, I'm beaming all the good things. Gratitude and blessings to you. Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. It really can be as easy as plugging and playing it in. It doesn't have to be complicated. I've done all the legwork for you. So is 7th generally a more personal connection house? Like, could you launch? Yes, you absolutely could. 7th is really good for delegation, and it's really good for collaboration, like partnerships. It's good for like affiliates. It's good for like bringing in help. It's good for, I even like using it. Like if I have an idea of something that I want to come out with, I might like post something up to get feedback from people on it during the 7th, because that's like you're kind of partnering with them, right? Like they're helping you to really refine it out as well. I hope that answers your question. Anybody else have any other questions so far that I can answer? I hope that I was able to explain how easy it is to pop everything into the Trello, from the Trello boards into your Google Calendar. Sasha's like, this system is nuts in a good way. I'm happy to hear that. I am a little crazy. I am a little neurotic. But I like everything to be like connected, right? I like for it to just make sense and for it to mesh together so that we're not, because as we're already starting to like figure everything out and plan it out, we are already having a million things going on, right? So we essentially, these boards are like an SOP for your brain for that astrological cycle. And the best part about the fact that there's 10 boards is that you're like, well, this isn't a good time to launch for me, but this other cycle is, right? So you can actually, you can space out your launches based on when your launch starts, because each of the launch boards starts with different houses. So if you're like, it's not good for me to launch this week, but I can start launching next week, and here's my full plan, right? So no matter where you are in the lunar cycle, it's going to give you a plan, right? I'm afraid to ask how many hours it took to create. One too many, but I always think of everything in terms of reusability. So if it's reusable over and over again, then it was worth the investment of time. All right. So this is also the way that it's, we're not having to, try to like look at our charts, look at where the moon is, then think of like the structure of the launch, then think about like, okay, well, when am I going to want to start talking about this? When do I need to have this particular thing done, et cetera, et cetera, right? We are able to prioritize the most important pieces, because those checklists, you don't have to do everything on them, but they're there, right? It's like, okay, do I want to do that this launch? No. Okay, maybe I just want to prioritize these things. I'll get these 3 things done because these are the most important pieces to me, and I'm going to launch with that. And the other stuff, maybe I can do it next launch, or maybe I don't ever have any intention of doing it ever, right? Because that's not how I work. But it's there. It's like it's already prepackaged for you, so that we can, kind of get off and running right from the very beginning. Okay, so is there any other questions about launching in general? Anything that I've covered here that I didn't get to fill in? I wanted to just share how easy this can be in terms of the plug and play feature. What I did show you on Trello there, the Trello boards in the lab, they're free. You get access to them. You can make a copy of them. You can do whatever you want with them for your own launches. But if you want the calendar feature, that's like an add-on with Trello. You have to like pay. It's like, I think it's like $20 a year with Chronify, which is kind of worth it if you regularly use them a lot and you want to just like assign tasks. And what's great about those cards is like we can break the cards apart. We can make them separate tasks. We can check off when we're done. We can archive it and kind of get it out of there and just move it along in terms of our progress. So it's kind of nice if you're really a visual person. But you don't have to use that. You could literally just look in there and go, here's when this is going to fall. I'm going to take this task and I'm just going to manually enter it into my Google Calendar. Like you don't have to use Trello for that part, but you can just use it to structure out your launch itself. What about the moon phases? So the moon phases are the container. So the reason that we like in terms of order of priority of launching, we look at house, then sign, then phase, right? We don't look at phase first, because the phase is just really, it's like the landscape, right? As long as you are promoting before a new moon happens, I don't worry about it, or talking about it in some way. You're preparing in some way. People know about it in some way. So as long as you're doing that, it doesn't matter if you're starting kind of towards the end of a lunar cycle, because you've already gotten enough momentum built up and you are filling in all of the gaps of the needs that people have, right? If you have not given yourself enough of a runway and have not been talking about it, then I don't recommend, doing something at the end of a lunar cycle. I recommend kind of moving it ahead into the next lunar cycle where it's going to have that opportunity to pick up more momentum. All right. So I would not let the moon phase determine whether I launched or not. I would choose my houses, my signs, the signs that are in the houses, so wherever the moon is. And then afterward, I would take into account the phase and just make sure, hey, okay, well, this phase is happening here. I just want to make sure that I've talked about it before we hit that phase. Does that make sense? Obviously, there's more energy around a full moon. So if you can pair your launch or your promotion around there, it's better. But it's not going to ever determine the success or the failure of your launch, in my opinion. Is Notion good to do this in too? I'm not as familiar with Notion. I have seen it. I've played around with it a little bit. I know there's people who are just totally like nerdy about it in a really awesome Virgo kind of way. I just haven't dove into it yet. So it's possible, but I haven't done it. Are there extra good days in a year to launch? Yes. And it's going to be a little bit hard to kind of explain this here, but basically, because the sun and the moon, when we have a new moon, the sun and the moon are together, and usually around that point, Mercury is not too far away, and neither is Venus. So they're kind of like, we've got like this congestion of planets that are kind of like moving around your chart at any given time, right? And so when they are moving through, I want to say some of your more extroverted houses or your money houses, that would be really good timing for that. as long as it's not like Mercury's not retrograde and because if you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, you don't have to worry about Mercury retrogrades. But if you don't have it in your chart, you're going to feel it. And it may, like, if you do have it in your chart, it's actually a really good time for you to launch because you're going to be super clear thinking. But when it's retrograde and you don't have it in your chart, it tends to create a little bit of, it's redo periods, right? And so when we're doing a launch, we don't want to be redoing anything, right? We don't want to be having to review during a launch. We want to review after. So it kind of puts little obstacles in the way for you to kind of slow down and assess things. And that's not the best timing during a launch. Mercury retrogrades can be good for nurturing though. If you don't have Mercury retrograde in your chart, then it can be a good for a nurturing period because if we're focusing on selling all the time, it's not great, but we can use those periods to nurture and then eventually move it into another launch cycle, right? How do I know if I have Mercury retrograde in my chart? So you would find the Mercury symbol, and next to the Mercury symbol, there'll be a little R. And if there's a little R, then it was retrograde when you were born. But yeah, I want to say in terms of good times to launch, like as the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus is kind of moving through first house, second house, third house is awesome. Fifth house, sixth house is really good. 9th, 10th, 11th is really good. Especially 10th, between 9th and 10th is excellent because it's giving you attention, right? It's like shining a giant spotlight on your reputation. So long as Mercury's not retrograde and you don't have it retrograde in your chart, then you should be fine. I hope that answers your question. Okay, guys, I think that's everything. I think we've plugged and played all the dates in there. You can see what's possible when we are applying this system into our calendars for an actual launch and building out a promotion. And again, launching can be anything that you want to just get people's eyeballs on. This is the last day of our 3-part event. If you would like to dive in and do more of this in your business and apply it within your chart, and build out your marketing, build out your schedules, your tasks, your launches, of course, your social media, I encourage you to join us in the lab. Susanna, if you wouldn't mind sharing the link there, that would be great. The doors are going to be closing for the lab on Monday. I don't know when I'm going to be opening them again because the next thing I'm going to be stepping into is the certification for this program. But if you are interested, go and check that out. And if you have any questions, you can shoot us an email at support@moonsiteplanner.com. I would love to have you join us. You get all those Trello boards, as I just showed you there. I showed you one of them, but you get 10 of those. You get the full Moonsite launch system. You get weekly Mooncast, which is going to tell you everything that's going on. You get the entire Moonsite planning system from your schedule to your tasks to your marketing to work with in your business for all of your goal setting. I even have people using it to write books. It's an excellent system for kind of getting in touch with how you naturally operate and then going about and doing those particular things, whatever they may be in your business. It could be creating product, it could be writing, it could be creating videos, it could be working one-to-one with clients. We even have people who use it for network marketing. There is all kinds of applications to it because you are the system. So if you are interested in joining us, you're going to get access to all of that stuff right away. And if you have any questions about this, about how you can use it or if it's right for you, don't hesitate to send us an email. The replays for these are going to stay up until Monday. So if you are still catching up and you haven't had a chance to watch day 1 and day 2, you'll still have time to do that. Thank you, Susanna. You're very welcome, Sasha. The group calls are almost always hosted on Monday at 10 a.m. So it will be either a new moon / quarterly planning call or just a new moon monthly call, or we have group calls, or we have live labs, which are hosted with Kat Mason, where she teaches an astrological concept, or it's like an astrological study group. So we rotate those. So those are hosted almost every Monday in the group. And mine are hosted over Zoom, my calls, and hers are hosted right inside of the Facebook group. So she will teach you right directly in there and answers any questions that you have where you're stuck if you're curious about your own astrology. There's also a vault of content in the portal on approaching and learning astrology from an intuitive place on top of the actual moon-site system. So lots and lots of goodies in there. Lorraine said, excellent information. Thank you. You're so welcome. I would jump on, but my finances aren't there yet unless I have a big breakthrough, biz breakthrough to one day. Oh, when the time is right, you will be in there. I trust that. No stress. Thank you for sharing the replay area, Susanna. You're very welcome. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, guys, I hope you have an awesome weekend. Again, the replays will be at that link. They'll also be taken out here in the group, but that one is the one that has all the videos that have been edited properly, where there's no tech glitches. You're welcome to check that out. And of course, check out the lab enrollment page and just see all the goodies that you're going to get in there. There's also a tour in there that walks you through what's inside, just to give you an idea of what's included. But if I haven't answered anything, or you're coming back and listen to the replay, you can post your questions here. You can send us an email at support@moonsiteplanner.com and we will get you taken care of. Thank you, guys. I will see you soon.